My name is Aisha Williams. I'm 32 years old, and I'm speaking to you from a high-rise office in Atlanta, Georgia, the same office where my entire family's legacy was rebuilt from ashes. If you are listening to this, I request you to please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and press the bell icon for more videos like this in the future. So let me start at the beginning. I grew up in a house where money was a language. Not the kind where we had a lot of it, we didn't. My father was an accountant for a mid-sized firm, and my mother was a middle school teacher. We were solidly middle class. But the way my parents talked about money, the way they tracked it, the way they made decisions based on numbers and not emotions, that became the way I thought about the world. My father's name was James Williams. He was a man of few words, but those words meant something. He didn't talk about his feelings. He talked about IRAs and mortgage rates and tax brackets. He kept a spreadsheet of every dollar that came into the house and where it went. I remember watching him at the kitchen table on Saturday mornings, his glasses on, pen in hand, writing down numbers. My mother would joke about it. "James, we're not running a Fortune 500 company, we're just paying the bills." But that precision, that attention to detail, I inherited it. By the time I was 12, I knew exactly how much my parents made, what our mortgage was, and how much was left for groceries after taxes. My friends thought I was weird, but I felt safe. When you know the numbers, you can't be surprised. My mother was different. Her name was Patricia, and she was the emotional center of our family. She was warm, spontaneous, the kind of person who would bring home stray animals and convince my father to let us keep them. She was a teacher, which meant she believed in potential. She believed that people could change, could grow, could become better versions of themselves. She believed in redemption and second chances. She believed in people. I loved my mother, but I learned early that her optimism about people wasn't always rewarded. I watched her get taken advantage of by friends. I watched her give money to relatives who never paid her back. I watched her believe in the best in people over and over, only to be disappointed. So I became my father's daughter. I became the one who watched, who calculated, who protected. Marcus was born when I was 4 years old. I remember the day we brought him home from the hospital. I remember my mother putting him in my arms and saying, "This is your brother. You're going to take care of him." And I took that literally. At 4 years old, I decided that was my job, to take care of Marcus. He was beautiful. He had our mother's smile, our father's eyes, and he had something else that neither of them had: charm. Even as a baby, people were drawn to him. Strangers would stop my mother on the street just to comment on him. By the time he was 5, he could walk into a room and make everyone smile. I was different. I was serious. I was the quiet one. While Marcus would run around the house making jokes, I was organizing my books, planning, thinking ahead. Teachers always said the same thing about me. Aisha is very responsible for her age. She's very focused. What they meant was, this girl doesn't play. This girl doesn't waste time. My parents let Marcus be a kid, but with me, there was an understanding. I was going to be the one who made it. I was going to be the one who figured things out. I was going to be the reliable one. And then I was 17 and our parents died. It was a Tuesday in September. I remember the exact date because I still think about it every September, September 14th. I was at school. I was a senior in high school, taking AP classes, getting straight A's, doing everything right. Marcus was in his senior year of college, living in a dorm at Georgia State, studying business like my father had wanted him to. My father was driving home from work. My mother was meeting him for dinner. It was supposed to be a date night. My mother had mentioned it earlier that morning. She was excited about it. They'd been married 23 years, and she still got excited about date nights with my father. I was in my AP government class when the principal knocked on the door. I remember Mrs. Harrison's face changing when she looked at the principal, then at me. I remember knowing in that moment that something had broken. "Aisha, can you come with me?" The drive to the hospital happened in a daze. A police officer was driving me. I kept asking questions that nobody could answer. What hospital? What happened? How bad is it? There was an accident on the interstate, the officer said finally. 2-car collision, emergency services have been dispatched. My parents were in the ICU. My father was in critical condition. My mother was in critical condition. I sat in a waiting room with a victim advocate who kept asking if there was someone she could call. I called Marcus. He left immediately from college, a 2-hour drive that he probably did in 90 minutes. My father died at 11:47 p.m. He'd been in the ICU for 13 hours. Marcus had made it there. We sat in that ICU waiting room, Marcus in a chair next to me, both of us in our school clothes, both of us frozen in a state of shock that feels even now like I'm still moving through it. My mother died 3 hours and 35 minutes later. I remember the exact times because the doctor came out and told us, and I wrote it down. I don't know why I wrote it down. I just needed to document it. I needed to make it real by putting it in numbers. 3:22 a.m. My mother died at 3:22 a.m. What I remember after that is fragmented. Marcus crying, relatives arriving, phone calls to distant aunts and uncles, a funeral director explaining casket options, a lawyer explaining probate. My father had a will. He'd updated it 3 years earlier, right before Marcus's college. In it, he left everything to my mother. In the contingency section, which listed what would happen if they both died, he left everything to me. Not to both of us, to me, with a note that said, Aisha will know what to do with it. He knew. He'd always known that I was the one who understood the numbers, who understood discipline, who understood that love sometimes meant making hard choices. I was 17 years old. Marcus was 21. Our parents had left us a house with a mortgage, about $340,000 in life insurance money between them, and an understanding that Aisha was in charge now. The next months were a blur of paperwork and decisions. I had to graduate from high school while simultaneously dealing with estate settlement. I had to sit in meetings with lawyers and accountants while kids my age were going to football games. Our parents' insurance money came through about 3 weeks after the funeral. I sat down with a financial advisor, someone my father had worked with, and we talked about what to do. There was enough to pay off the house, pay for Marcus's college, and have maybe $80,000 left over. I was 17 years old, and I was making decisions about 6 figures of money. What would your father have done? The advisor asked me. I didn't have to think about it. My father would have been methodical. He would have calculated returns and tax implications and long-term growth. He would have been precise. Pay off the house, save the rest, invest it conservatively, and make sure Marcus can finish college without debt. The advisor looked at me like I was an adult. That was the moment I understood that I had to be one. I went to Georgia Tech. I studied finance because it seemed practical, because my father had always respected numbers, because I was already fluent in the language of money. My scholarships covered tuition, and I worked part-time at the university bookstore to cover living expenses. Marcus finished his business degree at Georgia State. We'd tap on a phone once a week. He'd tell me about his classes, his friends, his job search. I'd help him with big decisions. When he got a job offer from a tech company as a marketing analyst, paying $48,000 a year, I helped him analyze whether to take it. It's an entry level, I told him, but the company has a good trajectory. They're growing, your salary will grow too. Take it. He did, and I was right. Within 3 years, he was making $62,000. Within 5, he was making $85,000. I graduated from Georgia Tech with a degree in finance and a cumulative GPA of 3.89. I got a job at Morrison Financial Services, a mid-sized investment firm in Atlanta, starting at $58,000 a year. Within a year, I was promoted to analyst. Within 3 years, I was senior analyst. By the time I was 26 years old, I was making $140,000 a year and managing a team of 8 people. But that's not the real story. The real story is what I was doing in the hours nobody could see. I'd read about financial independence. I'd learned about building wealth through disciplined investing and strategic business. I'd studied people who'd built empires, not through inheritance or luck, but through systematic accumulation of knowledge and capital. When I was 24, I started a consulting business on the side. Nothing big at first, just me working from my apartment on weekends, helping small business owners understand their finances. I charged $150 an hour. I worked 15 to 20 hours a week. It wasn't much money, but it was mine. It was separate from Morrison Financial. It was invisible. By the time I was 26 years old, I'd made $35,000 in consulting fees. I didn't spend any of it. I invested it. I reinvested the return.
He'd call me occasionally when he wanted to talk about whether he could afford something. Should he get a new car? No, his current car was fine. Should he take a vacation? Yes, but budgeted carefully. Should he invest in the stock market? Yes, start with index funds. He trusted my judgment absolutely, and I earned that trust by being right consistently about money. But there was something else in how he related to me during those years, a kind of dependence that went beyond normal sibling advice seeking. He didn't make major decisions without consulting me, not just financial decisions, life decisions. When his company offered him the chance to move to a different department, he called me. When he was thinking about getting serious with a girlfriend, he called me. Am I compatible with her? He'd ask. And I would listen, and I would analyze, and I would give him advice based on what he told me. What I didn't fully understand at that time was that I was the replacement for our parents. I was the person who was supposed to tell him what was right. I was the authority figure. I was the one who made the world make sense. This is important because it explains what happened next. It explains why, when Brittany arrived, she didn't just attract Marcus, she targeted him. She saw a young man who was accustomed to having a woman tell him what to do, and she saw opportunity. Marcus met Brittany in January 2023 at a company networking event. He called me 3 days later. I met someone, he said, and I could hear the excitement in his voice. Tell me about her, I said. Her name is Brittany, she's 23, works in pharmaceutical sales at a company downtown. She's beautiful, she's really smart, she seems to know exactly what she wants. Everything he said was enthusiastic, but the last thing he said, she seems to know exactly what she wants, I stored that away, because wanting something and being good for someone are not always the same thing. Do you want to bring her to dinner? I asked, so I can meet her. Yeah, he said, I would love that. Would you mind cooking something nice? This was in March, I remember, because the weather was starting to warm up. I made a pasta dish with fresh ingredients. I set the table carefully. I told myself I was just being a good sister, preparing to meet the woman my brother was interested in. What I was actually doing was preparing to observe. Brittany arrived at my apartment at 6:47 p.m. on a Saturday evening. She was exactly what Marcus had described. Beautiful, put together, the kind of woman who walks into a room like she's already deciding whether it's worthy of her presence. She was wearing heels, designer handbag, her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup was flawless. She looked like she spent 4 hours every morning becoming Brittany. The first thing she did when she came through the door was look at my apartment and make a face. Oh, she said, it's small. Not, it's nice, not, I like it, just, it's small, and said in a tone that made smallness sound like a personal failing. It suits my needs, I said. She moved into my living room and sat down on the couch without being asked. That's when I started analyzing her in a different way, not as Marcus's girlfriend, but as a person exhibiting behavioral patterns. When Marcus came into the living room to sit next to her, she immediately repositioned him. She reached up and adjusted the collar of his shirt like it was wrong.
"That looks better," she said. Not, "Your shirt is nice," or "I like that color," but a correction, as if she had the authority to improve him. During dinner, she talked constantly, not in a friendly way, in a way that suggested that any moment of silence was an opportunity she needed to fill. She talked about her job in pharmaceutical sales. She talked about how she was the top performer in her region. She talked about her investment portfolio. She talked about how she'd traveled to Europe last year. But when Marcus tried to contribute to the conversation, she'd interrupt him. "You're not saying that right," she said when he tried to describe a project he was working on. "Let me explain it. He's basically doing data entry. He calls it marketing analytics, but it's really just entering information into spreadsheets." Marcus laughed along, like it was joking, like she wasn't reducing his actual job, which required analysis and strategic thinking, to data entry. I watched him smile and nod, and I watched him shrink just slightly, the way a person shrinks when they're being diminished in front of someone they want to impress. When I mentioned that I'd been promoted at Morrison Financial, her response was, "That's nice, but you must work so many hours. Don't you ever think about having a personal life?" This was said in a tone that made ambition sound like a character flaw. "My personal life is fine," I said calmly. "It's just," she continued, and I could see her searching for the next criticism, "women who focus only on their careers often end up alone. You should think about what you're sacrificing." What I was thinking was, this woman just met me. This woman has known me for 90 minutes, and she is already trying to make me doubt my choices. That's when I understood. This is a woman who needs control, not just over herself, but over the people around her. She wasn't flirting with Marcus or falling in love with him. She was assessing him as something to mold. After dinner, after Brittany had left, Marcus stayed to help me clean up. "So, what do you think?" he asked, drying dishes. I was very careful with my response, because I could see that he wanted my approval. I could see that he was invested in this already. "She's confident," I said. "What do you like about her?" "She's really put together. She knows what she wants. She's not unsure about anything, and she seems to really care about how I come across, like she's helping me be better." The phrase "helping me be better" landed like a stone. "How is she helping you be better?" I asked. "Like my presentation at work. She said I was nervous and I didn't sound authoritative enough. She's been coaching me on how to speak more confidently. She thinks I have potential if I just, present myself better." What he was describing was someone who had identified what she perceived as his weaknesses and was now positioning herself as the person who would fix them. "Marcus," I said carefully, "be careful with that kind of relationship." "What do you mean?" "I just mean," I chose my words very carefully, "that you should be careful about letting someone else be the judge of whether you're good enough, you know?" He didn't really understand. I could see it in his face. He was too enamored with Brittany to understand what I was trying to tell him. "I think she just cares about me," he said. Over the next few months, I started noticing a pattern. Marcus would call me less frequently. When he did call, Brittany would be there, and I could hear her voice in the background correcting him on small details. "We should get together for dinner," I'd suggest. "Let me check with Brittany," he'd say. The phrase "check with Brittany" became familiar. It meant I need her permission. It meant my time isn't really mine anymore. When we did get together for dinner, which happened increasingly rarely, Brittany would be there and she would control the evening. She would control what restaurant we went to. She would control what he ordered. She would make jokes at his expense that made everyone uncomfortable, and he would laugh along like he was supposed to. "Your shirt is too tight, baby," she said at a restaurant in front of me. "You've been eating too much." Marcus looked at his shirt. It was the same shirt he'd been wearing for 2 years. It wasn't too tight, but he was already accepting her assessment of it. "I've been hitting the gym less," he said apologetically, like he owed her an explanation for his body. "You should be hitting the gym more," she said. "You want to stay in shape for me, right?"
I watched this interaction and I felt something crystallize inside me. This wasn't love. Love doesn't keep score. Love doesn't make you smaller. This was a woman methodically making my brother dependent on her approval. In May 2023, Marcus told me he'd moved in with Brittany. When did this happen? I asked. Last month, he said. Brittany wanted to move in together. She thinks it'll help us get to know each other better before we get married. You're planning to get married? I asked. Maybe, he said. I mean, yeah, eventually. That's what she wants. I noted the phrasing, that's what she wants, not that's what we both want, what Brittany wants. How are you feeling about it? I asked. Good, he said. I feel good about it. I mean, Brittany says I should feel good about it, so I do. The fact that he couldn't distinguish between what she was telling him to feel and what he actually felt, that's when I started to understand the scope of what was happening. Here's what I started noticing, in the methodical way I notice things. Brittany was following a specific pattern of control, and because I work in finance, because I analyze human behavior for a living, I could see it clearly. Step 1, isolation. She was slowly, systematically cutting Marcus off from the people in his life, not through prohibition, she was too smart for that, but through suggestion. Don't you want to spend time with me instead? Your friends are kind of immature, don't you think? Your sister is so serious. Don't you want to hang out with people who are fun? When Marcus would suggest seeing me, she'd find reasons it wasn't a good time. I'm not feeling well, she'd say, or I had a bad day and I really need you here with me. She was making herself the person he needed to take care of.
Step 2. Criticism and gaslighting. She would point out things about him that were supposedly wrong. His appearance, his job, his family, his intellect. Nothing was ever quite right. And when he'd defend himself, she'd make him doubt his own perception. You're being defensive, she'd say. I'm just trying to help you see the truth about yourself. Step 3. Making herself indispensable. She'd take over his responsibilities. She'd control his money. Let me handle your finances. You're not very good with budgeting. She'd make his decisions. You should wear this, not that. You should take this job, not that one. You should spend time with these people, not those people. Step 4. Conditioning him to seek her approval. Everything he did, he'd run by her first. Is it okay if I? Do you think I should? What do you want me to do? This is a well-documented pattern of coercive control. It's used by people with specific personality patterns, manipulative, narcissistic, with a compulsive need for power over others. The outcome, if left unchecked, is a person who loses all sense of autonomy and becomes entirely dependent on their controller for their sense of self-worth. And I was watching it happen to my brother in real time. But I was also very busy. In 2023, while Marcus was slowly losing himself to Brittany, I got promoted to senior analyst at Morrison Financial Services. It was a significant role. I managed a team. I was responsible for portfolio strategy. I was making $140,000 a year, which was excellent for my age. But I was also building something else. By 2023, Meridian Wealth Solutions had grown beyond my weekend hobby business. I'd landed a significant client, a real estate development company that needed financial consulting on a large project. The project fee was $40,000. That was more money than I'd made in my entire first year of consulting. I reinvested it. I hired a part-time bookkeeper. I took on more clients. By the end of 2023, Meridian had revenue of $187,000. I'd made a profit of $93,000 after expenses. In 2024, I ramped it up even more. I was working at Morrison Financial during the day, managing 8 people, attending meetings, building strategy, and I was working on Meridian from 7 p.m. to midnight most nights and all day Saturday and Sunday. I was running on coffee and determination and the kind of focus that comes from knowing exactly what you want. What I wanted was this. I wanted to build something so substantial, so powerful, that nobody could ever hurt me again. I wanted to create a buffer between myself and chaos. I wanted to be the person with resources, with options, with power. And I did it quietly, invisibly, where nobody could see. Marcus would call me occasionally during this period. I'd answer, but I was distracted. I was multitasking. I was checking email while talking to him. "Are you okay?" he asked once. "I'm fine," I said, "just busy with work." "You're always busy with work," he said, and I brushed it off. I told myself that he was an adult. I told myself that I couldn't control his relationship. I told myself that he was making his own choices. What I was really doing was abandoning my responsibility to him because I was building power elsewhere. In April 2024, Marcus called me with excitement in his voice for the first time in months. "I got a job offer," he said, "a really good one." "Tell me," I said, and I set down what I was doing and actually focused. "It's a senior marketing manager position at a fintech startup. They're located downtown. The salary is $87,000 a year. It's a $25,000 bump from what I'm making now, and there's a management track. I could be a director within 2 years. That's incredible," I said. "Are you going to take it?" "I want to," he said, "but I need to talk to Brittany about it first." "Why do you need to talk to Brittany about your career?" I asked. "Because she might think it's not a good move. She has opinions about my career path." "It's your career," I said carefully, "not hers." "I know," he said, "but I want to make sure she's okay with it." 3 days later, he called me back. "I'm turning it down," he said. "Why?" "Because Brittany says the commute would be too long. She works in Buckhead. If I work downtown, we wouldn't be able to see each other as much during the day. And she said that if I really loved her, I would want to minimize time away from her." I was sitting at my desk at Morrison Financial Services when he said this. I remember the exact moment. I remember setting down my coffee. I remember very carefully not saying what I wanted to say, which was, "Brittany doesn't get to make your career decisions." Instead, I said, "Do you want to take the job?" "Yes," he said, "but not as much as I want to make Brittany happy." And I understood in that moment that he had already given away his autonomy. He had already learned to prioritize her happiness over his own future. This wasn't going to get better. This was going to get worse. "I need to talk to you about Brittany," I said. "I don't want to talk about this," he said immediately. "Every time I bring her up, you seem to judge her." "I'm not judging her," I said. "I'm concerned about you." "Well, don't be," he said. "I'm happy. I'm in a committed relationship, and I'm going to ask her to marry me soon." He asked her to marry me in October 2024. I found out via a text message with a photo of an engagement ring. She helped me pick it out. The caption read, "She knows what she wants." That phrase again, "She knows what she wants," not "she knows what I want," not "we decided together." She knows what she wants. I stared at that photo for a long time, and I made a decision. I was going to stop being passive. I was going to stop hoping he'd figure it out on his own. I was going to act. But I wasn't going to act yet. I was going to wait for the right moment, and I was going to do it in a way that would be unmistakable. In 2024, while Marcus was shrinking, Meridian was expanding. I landed contracts with 3 major corporations. My annual revenue hit $847,000 by November 2024. I hired a team of 4 people. We had a small office space in Midtown that was registered under a corporate name, not my personal name. To anyone who looked, Meridian Wealth Solutions was a legitimate, successful firm. To Marcus, it didn't exist. To my boss at Morrison Financial Services, it didn't exist. To my friends, it didn't exist. I existed in 2 worlds. The public Aisha Williams was a successful analyst at Morrison Financial Services, making 6 figures, living modestly, keeping a low profile. The private Aisha Williams was building a multi-million-dollar business empire that nobody knew about, and I was doing it very deliberately. This is the thing that people don't understand about power. The most effective power is the power nobody knows you have. If you tell people about your money, they want a piece of it. If you tell people about your influence, they try to manipulate it. If you tell people about your capabilities, they either fear you or they target you. So I told nobody. I remember talking to my therapist about this during this period. Yes, I had a therapist. I'd been seeing one since college. She was helping me work through the trauma of losing my parents, the responsibility I'd taken on too young, my tendency to be overly controlling. I'm worried you're building a wall, she said. I'm building protection, I said. Those are sometimes the same thing, she said. But I wasn't interested in that analysis. I was interested in being safe. In late 2024, the wedding planning began. Marcus and Brittany decided on a destination wedding in Cancun in May 2025. They decided on a resort. They decided on a guest list of 200 people. Brittany made all the decisions. Marcus approved them. I was invited, but only as a guest, not as family. The invitation came in the mail to my apartment. It was elegant, it was expensive, and it made me understand very clearly that Brittany was erasing me. In January 2025, Marcus mentioned something that made me understand the depth of what had happened. Brittany's been talking about having a family meeting before the wedding. She wants to talk about finances. She wants to understand what I'm going to inherit. What do you mean, what you're going to inherit? I asked. From our parents. She wants to know what's in the trust. She wants to plan for our financial future. Does she? I said quietly. Our parents' trust was structured to give Marcus about $150,000 when he turned 30. It was their gift to him, and now Brittany is looking at it like it's a resource she can plan around. Is that okay? Marcus asked. No, I said. That's not okay. Your inheritance is yours, not hers. She's my fiancé. Soon she'll be my wife. Why wouldn't I include her? Because she's systematically isolating you and controlling you and positioning herself to take your money, I wanted to say. Instead, I said, we'll talk about it more later. In April 2024, 1 month before the wedding, Marcus's boss called me. Her name was Jennifer Walsh. She worked at the fintech company where Marcus worked. I'd never spoken to her before. I didn't even know she had my number, but she had found my contact information somehow. Ms. Williams, she said, this is Jennifer Walsh. I work with your brother Marcus. I wanted to reach out to you about something I'm concerned about. My body went very still. I was at my desk at Morrison Financial Services. It was 2 p.m. on a Wednesday. What is it? I asked. It's about Marcus's job performance. Over the last year, I've noticed a significant decline. He's missing deadlines, he's not engaged in meetings. When I offer him opportunities for growth, he says he needs to check with his fiancée. He checks with his fiancée about work decisions? I asked. Directly. He told me last week that he wasn't interested in a senior manager position because his fiancée didn't think it was a good move. I'm concerned that something is going on at home that's affecting his work, and I'm also concerned. That's not what I asked, I said. I asked if you were happy. I will be, he said, once I'm married to her, once I'm doing everything she wants me to do. That's when I'll be happy. And I understood very clearly that he had no idea what he was saying. He had no idea that what he was describing was not a marriage, it was servitude. I reached across the table and I took his hand. Marcus, I said, I want you to know that I love you, no matter what happens. Do you understand that? Yeah, he said, I know. And I want you to know that I'm always going to be here for you, even if you push me away, even if Brittany tells you not to talk to me. I'm always here. I know that too, he said, but I don't think he really did know it. I think he'd stopped knowing it. I think Brittany had convinced him that the people who loved him were obstacles, not support. I flew to Cancun on May 16th. I was the only passenger on the plane wearing a navy suit. I was the only passenger checking a garment bag carefully so it wouldn't wrinkle. The resort was exactly what I expected. Expensive, beautiful, designed to make you feel like you've entered a different world where money has solved all problems. I checked into my hotel room. I didn't check in as Aisha Williams, Marcus's sister. I checked in as the owner of Meridian Wealth Solutions, coming to oversee the financial arrangements for a wedding. The resort staff treated me completely differently than they would have treated me as a wedding guest. They were deferential, they were helpful, they wanted to make sure everything was to my satisfaction. This is what I wanted Marcus to understand. This is what I wanted him to see. This is what power looks like. I didn't attend the rehearsal dinner. I didn't interact with the wedding party. Instead, I spent the afternoon in my room, preparing. I had my phone. I had screenshots of financial information. Nothing sensitive, nothing that would violate confidentiality, but enough to establish who I was. I had statements about Meridian's partnerships, her client list, her revenue. Just facts, just information. I also had something else. My words, the thing I was going to say. I'd been preparing this speech in my head for weeks, not memorizing it, I don't do things that way, but preparing it, organizing it, making sure that every word meant something. I arrived at the ceremony at 5:15 p.m. as the sun was beginning to set over the beach. I wore my navy suit, I wore minimal jewelry. I looked like someone who was accustomed to being the most important person in any room because I didn't need to announce it. The ceremony started at 6 p.m. I stood in the back and I watched. I watched Marcus come to the altar. His hands were shaking, his face was pale. He looked like a man walking towards something he wasn't sure about. I watched Brittany come toward him in her dress. She looked triumphant. She looked like she'd won something. And I watched my brother's face as he looked at her. He wasn't in love. He was compliant. There's a difference. There's a very specific look in someone's eyes when they've given up their will to someone else's. It's a blank kind of look. It's the look of someone who's stopped fighting. The vows came. His vows were a list of promises to follow her lead. Her vows were a list of promises to shape him. When they kissed, I felt nothing. That should tell you something. The reception was held in a ballroom decorated in rose gold and ivory. There was a band, there was dancing, there was a dinner service with multiple courses. I sat at a table with resort managers and event planners. I was positioned as someone important, someone there in a business capacity, not as a guest. I watched Brittany work the room. She moved from group to group, making sure everyone knew whose wedding this was. She laughed loudly. She touched people on the arm while she talked. She made sure every person in that room understood that she was the star. And I watched Marcus follow behind her like a shadow. When she gestured for him to come, he came. When she introduced him to people, he smiled on cue. When she laughed at her own jokes, he laughed along. At one point, a woman at his company tried to approach him. She was one of his colleagues, someone I later learned he'd worked with for 3 years. She was trying to congratulate him. Brittany appeared between them. "He's busy right now," she said, not meanly, just factually, like it was a statement of reality, not a choice. His colleague looked uncomfortable and walked away. I documented all of this. Not on my phone, I didn't take pictures or video, but in my mind, in the precise way I document everything. I noted the behavior, I noted the pattern, I noted the moment at 8:47 p.m. when Marcus looked like he wanted to escape. At approximately 9:15 p.m., I heard Brittany's friend making a comment to another woman. "She's so controlling, she won't let him breathe, but he seems fine with it." That was the moment I decided. I wasn't going to be passive anymore. I wasn't going to let this happen. I stood up, I walked to the DJ booth, I signaled to the DJ, and he stopped the music immediately because the person signaling is the owner of the financial company that's paying for this wedding. The silence fell across the ballroom like a predator's attention shifting. I walked to the microphone. Brittany's face went white. Marcus's face registered confusion, then recognition, then fear. "My name is Aisha Williams," I said, and my voice was very steady because I'd been preparing for this moment since my brother met this woman. "I'm Marcus's sister. I know that I'm not on the wedding program, I'm not supposed to be speaking, but I need to say something to everyone in this ballroom." I looked Marcus directly. "I want to start by telling you a story about 2 children who lost their parents when they were very young. The older child was 17, the younger child was 21, and suddenly they had to figure out how to take care of themselves. They had to figure out how to survive." I paused. People were starting to understand that this wasn't going to be a light toast. The older child decided that her job was to take care of her brother, not because anyone told her that, but because that's what love meant to her. It meant, I will make sure you're okay. I will figure things out. I will be the person you can trust. Brittany was starting to look furious. That older child worked very hard. She went to school, she got a job, she saved money, she helped her brother with his college, she helped him with his first apartment, she helped him with every decision because he asked her to and because she loved him. I took a breath. And then the younger child met a woman, and that woman told him that the person who'd been taking care of him all those years, that person didn't really understand him. That person was too serious. That person couldn't appreciate what he was really capable of, and only she could see his true potential. Brittany stood up. This is completely inappropriate. Sit down, I said, and she sat because I said it in a tone that didn't invite argument. What happened over the next 2 years is that this woman systematically dismantled everything that made my brother able to take care of himself. She isolated him from the people who loved him. She made him doubt his own judgment. She made him ask her permission for basic decisions about his own life. She made him turn down a promotion, a $25,000 a year promotion, because she wanted him to have more time for her. She made him believe that his career wasn't important, that his future wasn't important, that the only thing that mattered was what she wanted. The room was completely silent. I watched this happen, I said, and I told myself that it wasn't my responsibility, that he was an adult, that I should stay out of it. And I told myself that I was too busy. I was building something. I was focused on my career. I didn't have time to save my brother. I was quiet for a moment. But last month, my brother's boss called me. She was concerned about his well-being. She told me that his job performance had declined significantly. She told me that she was asking her fiancé for permission before pursuing opportunities. She told me that she was worried about what was happening to him. Brittany's face was turning red. That's when I understood that this had gone too far, that I couldn't be passive anymore, that I had to act. I gestured to the resort around us. You see, while my brother was losing himself, I was building something. I've spent the last 8 years creating a financial consulting company. It's called Meridian Wealth Solutions. It has annual revenue of approximately $9 million. It advises major corporations in the Southeast. It has significant influence in the Atlanta business community, and it was used, in part, to finance this wedding. The room was starting to understand what was—
It's over, I said gently. You saw it. But people will understand, or they won't. But that's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to yourself. I'm scared, he said. I know, I said. But you don't have to be scared alone. That's what I've been trying to tell you. We talked about specific things, about the promotion he'd turned down. It might still be available. About his career. He could rebuild it. About his independence. He could learn it again. About his identity. It was still in there somewhere, underneath everything Brittany had buried. I want to apologize, he said at one point, for not listening to you, for pushing you away, for believing her over you. You don't have to apologize, I said. You were manipulated. That's not your fault. But you were right, he said. You tried to warn me. I did, I said, but I also wasn't there as much as I should have been. I was building my company. I was focused on my own success, and I let myself believe that you were fine, that you were making your own choices. I didn't fight hard enough to protect you. You're protecting me now, he said. Yes, I said, I am. Marcus didn't go back to Brittany that night. He came to my hotel room. He sat on the bed and he didn't talk much. He just sat there, processing the fact that his entire life had just changed in the span of one evening. The next morning, we flew back to Atlanta. Brittany tried to sue him for the wedding costs. A lawyer sent a demand letter claiming $187,000 in expenses. My lawyer responded with documentation, not accusations, not even threats, just facts. Documentation of the pattern of control, statements about the emotional harm, a very clear message. Pursue this and face a countersuit for emotional distress and harassment. The lawsuit was withdrawn within 48 hours. She tried to contact him at work. His company security was very helpful in preventing that. I may or may not have had a conversation with the HR director about the importance of supporting employees in difficult situations. She tried to reach out to him personally. That's when we filed for a restraining order. But the important thing isn't what happened with Brittany. The important thing is what happened with Marcus. Marcus moved into his own apartment, not one I helped him find, his own choice. He got a job at a different company. The original fintech company where he'd been offered the senior manager position was still interested in him. He took it, the $87,000 salary, the management track. He started seeing a therapist, a real therapist, not just his sister giving him life advice. The therapist helped him understand what had happened to him. The therapist gave him language for the experience: coercive control, isolation, gaslighting, psychological abuse. He started rebuilding relationships with the friends he'd lost. He started spending time with me again, though it was different now. There was gratitude in it, yes, but also independence. He was learning to make decisions and then tell me about them, rather than asking me first. 3 months after the wedding, he called me. "I just got promoted," he said. "To what?" I asked. "Director of Marketing," he said. "The opportunity came up and I applied for it without asking anyone if I should. I just did it." "I'm so proud of you," he said. "I couldn't have done this without you." "I absolutely could have," I said. "You just needed to remember how." 1 year after the wedding, Marcus was thriving. He'd dated someone casually but ended it when he realized he wasn't ready for a serious relationship. He was being intentional about his choices. He was thinking about his future. He was making decisions based on what he wanted, not based on what someone else wanted for him. Meridian Wealth Solutions had expanded to 3 offices across the Southeast. Revenue had hit $12.8 million annually. I'd hired a team of 20 people. We were advising Fortune 500 companies on financial strategy. I had become what I'd set out to become: invisible and powerful. But I had also become something else. I had become a woman who understood that power isn't just about building things in secret. Sometimes power is about standing up and revealing what you've built, just so people understand that there are consequences for their actions. Here's what I learned through all of this. The strongest women are the ones who build things nobody knows about, the ones who accumulate power quietly, the ones who are patient enough to wait for the moment when that power is needed. But I also learned that strength isn't just about invisibility. Strength is also about knowing when to be visible. Strength is about standing up and saying, "This is what I've built. This is what I'm capable of, and I'm using this to protect the people I love." Strength is about understanding that love and power don't have to be mutually exclusive. Love can be powerful, and power, real power, is built on a foundation of love. Brittany was wrong about Marcus. She thought she could break him down and rebuild him in her image. She didn't understand that you can't actually break a person down that way, not completely. There's always something underneath. There's always a part that remembers who they were before the breaking started. And sometimes, if they're lucky, there's a sister who remembers too, a sister who builds her own strength while waiting for the moment to use it. What I want everyone listening to understand is this: people who control others don't love them. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love doesn't keep score. Love doesn't make you smaller. Love doesn't make you ask permission. Brittany didn't love Marcus. She needed to control him. She needed to feel powerful by making him powerless. That's not love. That's pathology. And if you're in a relationship like that, you need to understand something. It's not your fault.
You didn't cause it. You can't fix it. The only thing you can do is leave. If you're watching someone you love in a relationship like that, you need to understand something. You can't make them leave. You can't force them to see what's happening, but you can be there. You can remind them that there's another way to live, and if they choose to come to you, you can help them remember who they were before the breaking started. Marcus is happy now, not because his life is perfect, but because his life is his, because he gets to make his own decisions, because he gets to fail and learn on his own terms. That's what strength looks like. That's what recovery looks like. And that's the story of how two siblings survived loss, navigated manipulation, and came out the other side intact. Thank you for listening to my story. If you heard something in it that resonated with your own experience, I want you to know you're not alone, and it's not your fault. That's the most important thing I have to say. Thank you.